right, my beautiful brats, gather around. Because today's fashion scroll comes directly from the Tuileries Garden in Paris, where Christian Dior has decided to revive something very old and very controversial in fashion: the idea of social rank. Yes, actual rank. The show notes reference 17th century rules of the Tuileries, when visitors were only allowed in if they wore clothing appropriate to their status. In other words, the garden had a dress code for aristocrats. And somehow Jonathan Anderson turned that into a Dior runway. So beautiful brats, welcome back to the Fashion Diaries, where we read the fashion scrolls of the week and decide what deserves a crown and what deserves exile. Today, we are talking about Dior Fall Winter 2026, Jonathan Anderson's second womenswear collection for the house. And I have to say something immediately. For the last few years, Dior learned very boyish, very masculine, very restrained. Not bad, but for me, something was missing. Dior is supposed to feel a little dreamy, a little pink, a little sequined, a little fantasy, a little romantic, and this collection finally brought some of that magic back. This show took place in the Tuileries Garden, which Dior has used for several seasons. But this time, Anderson built a massive greenhouse structure around the octagonal basin, turning it into a pond with floating water lilies. And if that sounds slightly theatrical, that's because it was. The Tuileries is not just a pretty park. It was originally commissioned by the Queen, Catherine de' Medici, and later redesigned for Louis XIV, the Sun King. It was a literal place where aristocrats went to see and be seen. Fashion was a performance, status was visible. So when Dior talks about courtly dress codes in this collection, they're actually referencing real history. The show opened with a very Dior silhouette, bare legs, a pearl gray cropped jacket, and a huge dramatic skirt exploding underneath, which immediately echoes Dior's most famous idea, the new look from 1947, that moment when Christian Dior introduced the femme fleur, the flower woman, tiny waist, soft shoulders, huge skirts, at a time when Europe was still wearing practical, wartime clothing. Dior said, "No, we are going to wear beauty again," and Anderson seems fascinated with that idea. Beauty as escape, beauty as excess. So we saw fabrics like a brocade, chantilly lace, metallic jacquard, feathers, a rhinestone, cascading ruffles. It felt rich. It felt theatrical. And honestly, it felt very Dior. But Jonathan Anderson never just recreates history, he likes to rearrange it. So alongside these very aristocratic silhouettes, we also saw things like denim trousers, embroidered jeans, silk track pants with bridle button, robe coats worn like dresses, which is very him, high fashion mixed with everyday clothes, court dressing, but with a little chaos. Even the iconic bar jacket came back, but longer and looser in Donegal tweed. So instead of freezing Dior in the past, Anderson is treating the archive like something you can play with. Anderson also pulled inspiration from literature. Two works referenced in the show were Charles Baudelaires' poem, Et une patience, and Radcliffe's Hall novel, The Wall of Loneliness. Both are about people observing beauty in Paris, which connects perfectly with the flaneur idea, wandering the city and noticing elegance in passing strangers. So this collection almost feels like clothes designed for a Parisian promenade. You know, walking through the garden, looking fabulous, all of the above, check, pretending you're not being observed, but obviously being observed. The water lilies weren't just in the set, they appeared everywhere. As brooches, bag decorations, shoe details, prints, patterns, background, which is clearly referencing Monet's water lily paintings, located right next door at the Musée de l'Orangerie. So the show only becomes this little ecosystem of Parisian couture and culture. Paintings, literatures, musics, fashion, all of the above, history, all layered together, which is actually very smart. But there's also a bigger industry conversation happening here. Luxury brands are in a weird moment. Prices have gone up dramatically and millions of aspirational customers have quietly stepped away from the market. So brands are asking themselves, do we chase the mass luxury consumer again, or do we focus entirely on the very wealthy elites? A collection about aristocratic dress codes and social rank might suggest Dior is leaning towards the second option. Luxury returning to its original audience. And of course I checked in with the Bratz, because you all always have opinions. One comment said, I will be needing these high-heeled lily pad sandals. I will not explain myself to you. Honestly, fair. Another said, I really like the textural elements. The green on the first skirt is one of my favorite colors, so I'm biased. Same. Someone else pointed out the jacket is very 80s. My mom and grandma wore patterns like this with subtle, shiny thread. Fashion always circles back through memory. And one of my favorite comments said, I know people don't love Jonathan Anderson's Dior, but the way he rearranges traditional femininity is really interesting, which I think is exactly what he's doing. For me, this collection feels like Dior finally remembers something important. The house of Dior was built on fantasy, not minimalism, not practicality, fantasy. And for the last few years, that fantasy felt a little muted. This collection brought back texture, sparkle, volume, femininity, playfulness, that soft romantic, slightly theatrical Dior energy. Jonathan Anderson isn't copying Dior's history, he's remixing it. And honestly, that's exactly what the house needed. But now I want to hear from the Bratz. Did this collection give you the Dior magic again, or are we still waiting? And most importantly, are we all ordering the lily pad heels or just me? I will see you in the next Fashion Diaries. Sincerely written style, Mrs. October, aka the princess of fashion, the face of fashion, and the sole reason why there's an H in fashion.